Hi everybody, welcome to or back to Building the Bookshelf. Happy to have you here talking about another historical fiction novel today. This one is a new one. This one is super fun. This is The Windsor Affair from Melanie Benjamin. Now, Melanie Benjamin, she is a historical fiction queen. She has written several other books. If you are not a fan of hers, I have been fortunate enough to meet her at an author event. I love hearing from authors just about how they tackle their writing process and the amount of research that goes into historical fiction. And because you have, yes, it's based on history or based on real people, but you have to take some creative liberties in these situations and kind of filling in the gaps. But I think that she has a very practical and tactical approach to doing this. She takes it very seriously, knowing that these are actual people who existed in the world and not wanting to, be blasphemous to them in any way, shape, or form. But I think she's really trying to approach it by maybe telling a portion of the story for them that has not been told yet. So the Windsor Affair is in the same line. The Windsor Affair is the relationship. It's kind of the desperate housewives of the British monarchy, if you will, of the feud, the rumored feud, and some information has been documented about the feud between Wallis Simpson and the Queen Mother, Queen Elizabeth's mother, Queen Elizabeth II, as most of us know her mother. There was an Elizabeth before Queen Elizabeth. So their feud that lasted for decades, lasted through an entire reign. So this feud started when King Edward VIII, also known as David, when he abdicated the throne. And he abdicated the throne because he wanted to marry Wallis Simpson. Okay? And Wallis Simpson was an American. She was a two-time divorcee, which at that time was completely unacceptable in the Church of England. There was no way that the king was going to be able to marry someone who was twice divorced. So he decided that he was going to give up the throne and have his brother take over the throne instead. So that was Queen Elizabeth II. Queen Elizabeth, as we knew her in history, that was her father, who took over the throne because his brother had given it up. Now, where the War of the Windsors, as they called it, kind of came from was Wallis Simpson and the Queen Mother, Queen Elizabeth's mother. They did not see eye to eye. They were very different people just in general. Wallis was very fashionable. She came from America. She was all about the things and the parties and whatnot, whereas the Queen Mother was more laid back. She definitely fit into the expectations of British aristocracy and, the different expectations of a queen. She filled that role very well. And they just constantly butted heads because they saw things so differently. And as is discussed in the book, there, again, you never know until you hear it directly from the source, but there's been a lot of discussion about the fact that Wallis never intended to have David abdicate the throne. That was not her goal, that she honestly thought she was going to be the mistress and kind of acting as the queen, but not making it official, which she was fine with that. She never intended to marry David and have that completely upturn their life because she liked the high society life. She liked being the mistress of the king. That was kind of what her role was that she saw. And, again, long history of documentation from the monarchy having mistresses over the years, and she just thought that that's the way that they would go about things. And instead, he did abdicate the throne. He did kind of put a stake in the ground and say, no, this is my wife and I'm going to marry her, and if you won't accept that, then you won't accept us in the monarchy as a whole, which led to them basically being run out of Britain. And there was forever this wedge in the household and in the monarchy because he had not fulfilled what his role was. Now, his brother Bertie was always looked at as kind of the weaker of the two brothers. And so when it came time for him to be king, number one, he didn't think that was a role that he was going to fulfill. He had a stutter. He had a little bit of challenge sometimes publicly with public speaking, and all of a sudden he became a king just because his brother wanted to go and marry Wallis, right? So the Queen Mother, his wife, blamed Wallis for the fact that their lives were upended. They all of a sudden became the king and the queen, and their children, of course, their daughters, Margaret and Elizabeth, were next in line to the throne. And the pressure of being king, she always saw as that was what shortened Bertie's life and ended up making him ill and leading to his early death. which in turn resulted in her daughter Elizabeth becoming queen, which she again was resentful about because she felt that Elizabeth didn't have a full time to, be newlyweds or, even wanting to be in this role at all. It was just something that automatically became her responsibility as a very young woman that would not have happened had David been king, as the line of succession should have gone. So that is where their feud comes from. One of the things that and again, it's the Desperate Housewives of the British monarchy here in a lot of regards. And Melanie actually said in writing that she feels like history has repeated itself with different feuds that continue to go on in the monarchy, even today. You all know with Princess Kate and with Meghan Markle, kind of very similar situation. The thing that I found very interesting, on top of the fact that the book was just fun, right? It is what it is, as far as there was definitely some historical elements in there that I just did not know as far as the history of the abdication is concerned, and the fallout after World War II, and all of that went along with it. I didn't know much about the relationship between David Wallis and Hitler that they talked about a little bit in the book. So there are definitely some elements in there that she expanded upon, and Melanie talks a ton about how much research she has done to take it very seriously and to make sure that she has the factual pieces as factual as possible. So I really appreciate that she takes that part of it so seriously. But it is very catty, and the comments and the this and the that, and a lot of that you pick up, I think, in the book, that is just kind of, it is what it is. Like I said, they're just kind of jabbing at each other. But overarching at the end of the book, which is not something actually that I expected, she ends the book with in friendship from Elizabeth, when they're both at the end of their life, having both outlived their husbands, as we well know in history. But I think getting to that place where they realize that maybe they really didn't understand each other, and maybe understand the challenges that each one of them had in their individual relationships, in their individual roles, and that they actually may have been more alike than they thought that they were, which I think is the case with many people who butt heads, that there is some common theme that is tethering them to each other that they may not even realize until it's too late. So that was an interesting take. And Melanie said she was, before she started this book, that she was sure this was a relationship that had been talked about, that had been written about at some point in time, because there is so much material out there about the monarchy, but that their relationship specifically had not been discussed in prior written work. So it was really kind of fun to go on that journey and explore this. It's kind of like in the video that I talked about with Hazel Gaynor, I've become a Melanie Benjamin fan based off this book for sure. So I'm looking forward to talking about some more of her titles as I read more on my TBR list from her. But the Windsor Affair, it was a fun one. It was also kind of a good summer read. And she asked the question, and asked the question of you as well. Y'all can answer in the comments. So after reading the book, are you Team Wallis? Are you Team Queen Mother? Are you Team both? Are there no teams? Where were their husbands in all of this mess that was going on? It seems like they were both very strong women that were ruling their roosts in their individual ways. So which team are you rooting for? I'd like to hear what you have to say.